Doug McConey, who serves as the national leader of PwC's International Tax Services practice in the United States and a principal in the Washington National Tax Services Group. His experience includes foreign mergers and acquisitions, Subpart F planning, foreign tax credit planning, local country tax consultant, and tax compliance services. It's clearly he's an expert in all things tax. Mr. McConey is also a frequent author and lecturer, as well as a member of the advisory board for the International Tax Journal. He has over 10,000 followers across his social media platform, hosts a weekly YouTube leadership channel and a bi-weekly podcast called Cross Border Tax Talks. I bet we can add to his followers and his YouTube videos after tonight. He earned his Bachelor's of Science in Accountancy and Juris Doctorate from here at Mizzou and is excited to be back in Columbia. So please join me in welcoming Mr. McConey.
Good evening, accounting grads. Before I begin, let's first give all of our recent accounting students, give yourselves a round of applause. This is a big accomplishment. One of many accomplishments that you will have over the course of your career. What I wanted to do over the next 20 minutes or so is spend a little time just talking about my story and where I've been and where my career is taking me. And throughout the discussion, we're going to give a little bit of advice and some of the things that I've learned and some things that I hope you can take away as you think about your career journey. So this is me, back when I had hair and I didn't have a beard. But by way of background, I am actually a third generation Tiger. So my grandfather went to the University of Missouri, he's an electrical engineering major. My dad was a civil engineering major. My mom went to Mizzou. And so I'm a third generation Tiger. I grew up in St. Louis, along where my parents moved. For those that are from St. Louis, I went to Parkway West High School. Do we have any Parkway West? We got one. We got a few. All right. Well, go Longhorns. Fantastic. I graduated high school in 1993. I finished my undergraduate degree at Mizzou in 1996. And then I went to law school in 1999. And I was talking to a number of you. How many people are taking intermediate accounting? Do we have any intermediate accounting? Show your hands. Do we have a few? Okay. Well, if you haven't yet, I was sharing this story, and I think that one of my partners who's sitting over here didn't want me to share the story, which I'm going to anyway. Is the only F I ever received in my entire academic career was in intermediate accounting. And I remember, I remember the feeling. I'm not going to ask anybody to raise their hand if they've ever failed the course, but I'm sure every person that is sitting here at some point in your academic career did not do exactly as you had hoped. And I remember when I got that F, at the top of the exam it said, "Please come see me." And I can actually remember the TA's name, who I will not share, by the way, who said, "Why don't you come and you need to come see me." And when I went and talked to that TA, the TA said, and this was before they had, anybody could get an accounting, anybody could sign up for an accounting degree. I graduated, actually, I was the last class that graduated with a 4-year program. This was back in '96, and then they started the 150-hour requirement for the CPA. And so the TA said to me, do you really think you've got what it takes to be an accounting student? I said, well, I wanted to think about it. And I remember I went home and I talked to my parents and I talked to my dad. And I decided, and I looked at a number of different majors. In fact, I told my dad that I wanted to change my degree to philosophy, and he said that, this is a direct quote, "I'm paying for you to go to college to learn how to do something." I don't care what it is, but you need to be able to, when you're done with it, actually get a job. So I said, okay, that's fair. So I thought about some other degrees, and I knew I was pre-admitted to law school. There's something called the Robert Scholars Program. They actually still have that today. So I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. So what I said was, you know what, I'm going to suck it up. I'm going to get this degree in accounting. I know this will be an absolutely awesome degree. I know that regardless of what I would do for the rest of my career, that this would be a great foundation if I wanted to be a litigator, if I wanted to do whatever I wanted to do, if I wanted to go into business. And so I stuck my head down. I got A's on the next 2 exams at intermediate accounting, and I still got a C in the course. It was my only C in undergrad. But the reason I share that story is on Friday, I will mark my 20th anniversary with PricewaterhouseCoopers. I've been a partner for 10 years, and so I would love to see that TA at some point and remind her that if you're going to have adversity over the course of your career, whether it's your academic career, whether it's your professional career. But the key is to dust yourself off, to put your head down and get back to it. And if you set your mind to it, you can absolutely do whatever you want to accomplish. And so I started my career after I went to law school. I started my career at Arthur Andersen, which is now defunct. But after my second year in law school, I went into accounting, or I went into the accounting profession because I wanted to specialize in international taxation. And the reason that I wanted to do international taxation was not because I knew anything about international tax. It's because the summer before I went to Europe for the first time, and I had this amazing opportunity to go backpack around with one of my friends. Now, to put this in context, and this really isn't that long ago. Well, first of all, for everybody that is younger than me, I feel old, right? I'm 44, I've been at this for 20 years, but everybody in the room is older than me, thinks that I'm still pretty young guy. But when I was over in Europe in 94 or 95 or 96, we didn't have cell phones. Like, I actually carried a photer's book around, and we had to find like pay phones to then call the next city to actually find a hostel. In fact, when I was sitting in classes, like, nobody even had personal computers. Like, I mean, I didn't even have a laptop. I didn't get a laptop until my last year in law school. So it's just amazing, let alone cell phones. I mean, I didn't end up with a BlackBerry. Does anybody remember what a BlackBerry was? Like, we used to use BlackBerries for email, and I didn't get that until like 2004. I was like a manager with PwC. But I started my career in international tax with Arthur Andersen in Kansas City, and then I ended up taking a full-time position with PricewaterhouseCoopers. I was actually hired by Pricewaterhouse before the merger, and then when I started my career, it was actually PwC. So I worked in PwC in St. Louis for about 8 years, and then I moved to our Cincinnati office. And the reason I moved to our Cincinnati office is one of the partners that I worked for in St. Louis, in fact, he was a senior manager when I started my career in St. Louis. One of the partners who I worked for was hired by Procter & Gamble, and this was after we worked on Procter & Gamble's acquisition of Gillette. And this partner did such a great job that he was actually hired by P&G. So he moved to Cincinnati, and then one of the first things that he did after he moved to Cincinnati was that he hired another one of our partners who was in Cincinnati. And so what the firm said is, hey Doug, would you be interested in moving to Cincinnati? There's a path for you to be able to make partner, and we'd like for you to build and grow that international tax practice in Cincinnati. The thing that I am absolutely the most proud of in the course of my career was during the 5 years that I was in Cincinnati, I started with a team of 4 people. In fact, the day I showed up, one of the people quit. I left my team, and I was like, well, no, I'm trying to get everything going, and come on, this is going to be awesome. We're going to build the preeminent international tax practice in Cincinnati. And this woman looked at me and was like, okay, no, I'm going back to our private client services business. And I said, okay, well, you're lost. And so 5 years later, we ended up building a team of 19 people. And again, the thing that I'm the most proud of is that team of 19 people. Of those 19 people, 5 of those are now partners, and we've got another one that's up this year. And when I think about my mission and what I can do as part of the profession, is like, listen, we're all accountants, but I can make a positive difference in people's lives, and I can help people provide for their families and help try to make people more successful. And it's something that I take very seriously and I'm very, very, very proud of. So I worked in our Cincinnati practice for 5 years. I then they asked me to move to our Chicago office, where I led our international tax services, our regional practice based out of Chicago. I also led something called our integrated global structuring practice, and it's really where I started to travel extensively. I spent about almost 100% of the time on the road, and after my Chicago experience, where I spent 5 years there leading our integrated global structuring practice in the region, 14 months ago they asked me to lead our international tax services practice nationally. And so I moved to our Washington National Tax Services practice, which is based in Washington, D.C., and I've been there for the best part of 14 months. So the first piece of advice that I want to give is be patient, right? A career is a long journey, and I would challenge each of you that your career starts now. Think about the relationships that you're building. Think about the experiences that you're generating, the experiences that you're getting, this type of experience to be able to sit in a hall with your colleagues, to have the opportunity to talk to professors. Think about those upcoming internships. A career is a very, very long time. And it's easy to think about the ups and the downs and the Fs and the missed grades and the disappointments, whether it's professional. Everybody's going to have disappointment and things that they have to deal with from a personal perspective. But I would challenge each of you to be patient, that a career is a really long time, and think about your careers as a collection of experiences. And as I talk to our young associates and interns and that are going through the trials and tribulations of first busy seasons, or first just getting used to being a professional, like getting up every single morning and having to go to work like 5 days a week, first of all, is an adjustment, right? And then going through those performance reviews and going through raises and getting the ups and downs, that be patient, because a career is a long time. Make sure you develop as many relationships as possible and look at each experience as something that will build on to a longer career. I mean, listen, I've been at this for 20 years. I'm probably halfway through my career, and I will tell you, it goes fast. It's easy for me to say that, 20 years, it took me 10 years to make partner, which is relatively quickly, and then 10 years that I've been on my journey as a partner. And so be patient and think about that collective experience of a career. And as you get frustrated or as you get excited, as the ups and the downs, just remember that it is a long, long journey. And one of the things that we're going to talk about, it's important to enjoy the ride. So look around. We'll get back to that. So over the course of my career, I have had the opportunity to visit 6 of the 7 continents as part of my job. So apparently my inkling to want to travel and do international was worked, right? So I've been to 39 countries throughout my experiences at PwC. Next month I'll knock my 40th off. Again, I've been to every continent. We do not have an office in Antarctica, if you're wondering which continent I have not visited. But if anybody has clients there or a deal, I'm certainly willing to go. Let me know. I don't really have business cards, but you can find me online on any of the social media platforms. But I have loved my opportunity to travel. One of the things that I'm really passionate about, particularly being a partner in our international tax services practice, is the opportunity to work with people from all over the world. And every day I'm on the phone with people from all over the world, meeting different cultures and understand different business cultures. One of the things that I'm very passionate about is my social media. And so as Shannon mentioned, I am the only partner in any of the big 4, I think really in any of the professional services, that actually has a YouTube channel. And so I have, over the course of the last 3 years, I'm an amateur filmmaker. I've always enjoyed making movies. And one of the things that I also enjoy is being able to share my experiences both inside of tax and outside of tax with others. And I thought that starting a YouTube channel was a great way for me to be able to really share what I've learned along the way. And so I would encourage each of you to check me out on any of the socials. I think we're up to almost 15,000 followers. I think I hit 1 million views of my total overall videos. Interestingly, my biggest audience is on LinkedIn, and season 4 is coming soon, so we're actually in between. But season 4 is coming soon. We're going to be rebranding. You got to check it out. It'll probably be in about 2 weeks. I'm still finishing up the season 4. But one of the things that I do besides the YouTube videos where I share my experiences is, as mentioned, I do cross-border tax talk. So I do a podcast, and I share some of the technical things. So if anybody's interested in international taxation and wants to nerd out on a 35-minute podcast, or if you're having problems falling asleep, come listen to the podcast. I also video those, and you can find those if you prefer to watch your podcast. You can find those on YouTube. But besides, and I don't monetize any of my content. This is like all for fun, by the way. You can also check out douglaconey.com. My website was actually designed by my niece, who is a freshman here at Mizzou today, and she's actually videotaping me right here. So check out DougMcConey.com. It's got links to all the different, all my different social media platforms. But besides just pimping my social media platforms and trying to get more followers, and we're gonna check the follower count and subscriber count. I didn't have a lot of these. I mean, there were plenty of distractions that I was in when I was at university, but I did not have the distraction of the social media. In fact, I can't even imagine what it's like taking your computer to class with all of the distractions in your computer. In fact, one of the things that I'm working on, like I've just stopped taking my computers to meetings because I can get so distracted by email, and then, God forbid I look at one of the news sites or, the Wall Street Journal or something. My next piece of advice, besides being patient, is be present. I think all of us in today's society could learn from spending more time being mindful and being present in our daily lives. And as I look at the economy and I look at the future of jobs, that the thing that really is going to drive the next generation of our service economy and what's going to make all of you successful as part of being present is being technical, right? The economy and the workforce values expertise. And we sometimes lose some of this expertise and some of the things that we hear in our politics and the things that we hear in the media. But I will tell you that business rewards expertise. And if you can be present and you can learn and you spend time outside of work, if you're interested and if you spend time in work, being technical is really important. It's really critical to long-term success. So when you're sitting in that class, my first suggestion would be get out a pen and paper and write those notes down. I'm convinced that there's something about writing stuff down helps you remember. But listen, everybody has their own way of doing things. I think most importantly, it's being present, being technical, learning, and really spending time to absorb as much as you possibly can. And some of this stuff may be terribly uninteresting, right? And some of the stuff may be very interesting. But one of the things that I would challenge each of you is find those areas that are interesting to you. Like, one of the reasons that I finished my degree in accounting and went to law school was because I did not want to be an accountant. But then after taking that tax class in law school, something just clicked. And then I took the remaining of my tax classes. And then when I had that first internship experience, I knew. I was like, this is what I want to do. This is interesting. It's fascinating. I get to work with interesting people. I acknowledge we're not saving lives here, but it was something that was really interesting to me. And so what I would challenge each of you is to think about what's really interests you. And what that area is, learn it. Ask questions, raise your hand, and ultimately be technical. So when I was a new partner, I had been working on a transaction for a client. And we had run into a roadblock. One of the things that my client wanted to do was they wanted to do an internal reorganization. They had a number of different business lines, and they were thinking about potentially disposing one of their business lines. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was reorganize their business by business line. Well, one of the challenges that we ran into is one of their biggest areas, one of their biggest operations was in mainland China. And the issue that we ran into is that if we were going to try to reorganize their Chinese operations, China was going to tax the transaction. And this was just an internal reorganization. The company was not monetizing their asset. They weren't selling anything. They weren't trying to make any money. They just wanted to do an internal reorganization. And when we talked to our colleagues in China, they said, we understand what you want to do, but the fact is that this would be taxable in China. So I had to go back to my client and explain, hey, I know this is what the business wants to do and this is what you want to do, but unfortunately, you're going to pay, if you want to go forward with this, you're going to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in tax. And the client said, okay, forget it. We'll just put it on the shelf, and we'll deal with it later. We understand that we can't do this with China. So after that, I remember being very disappointed. I felt like I'd let the client down, and I sent an email to the head of our China technical practice who sat in Beijing, and a guy by the name of Matthew. And I sent a note to Matthew and I said, hey Matthew, China has this particular law. It is very unusual. Most countries outside of China, the US, most of mainland Europe, most other developed countries have exceptions for these type of internal reorganizations and otherwise wouldn't tax this type of transaction. Do you think it would be possible to maybe talk to the Chinese tax authorities to figure out if they would be willing to adopt an exception for this type of transaction? Well, much to my surprise, 2 weeks later, or much to my surprise, I get an email back from Matthew saying that the head of China's SAT, which is their State Administration of Taxation, would be willing to meet with me in 2 weeks. This is the head of China's SAT. Like, I'm a first-year partner sitting in Cincinnati, Ohio. So I remember getting that email going, oh, I probably need to call my boss, who was the ITS leader, and say, hey, Mike, I need to, I got a meeting with China's head of the SAT from their international division to go and talk to them about this particular issue. He was like, well, you can't go over there by yourself. You need some adult supervision. And I said, absolutely, I need some adult supervision. So one of the senior partners who I've been working with for years, who's one of my mentors, and I fly over to Beijing. And we go and we meet a day before our meetings, and we get an entire day of prep from our Beijing office. Here's where we're supposed to sit. Here's what we're supposed to say. Here's what we're not supposed to say. We're only supposed to speak if we're spoken to. They didn't want us to be able to share too much, and we had very, very specific instructions. So Richard and I nod our heads. Okay, we got it. So we meet at the office the next day. It's 10 miles from our office, if it's even 10 miles. And they say it's going to take an hour and a half because it's Beijing, and there are a lot of people in Beijing if anybody's been there before. And we get in the car. And instead of taking us an hour and a half, it takes us 2 hours. So we show up 30 minutes late. I swear, I flew halfway across the world. We showed up 30 minutes late to my meeting with the SAT. So we get to the SAT's office, and it is a room almost as big as this with one conference room in the middle. And we are the guests of honor, and they have us sit right in the middle. And we had a 2 hour scheduled for the meeting. Of course, we're already a half an hour late. So everybody comes in, and the entire meeting takes place in Chinese. Richard and I are sitting there looking at each other. We had no idea what was going on. It was very easy for us to follow the rules of don't spoke unless spoken to, because neither of us, spoiler alert, neither of us speak Chinese. So all of a sudden, we're a good hour into the meeting, and the doors open, and everybody stands up. So it was effectively all the PwC and our clients on one side, all the China SAT on the other side, and everybody stands up. And it was the head of SAT walks in. And across the table, there was no seat in front of us. It parts, and he sits right down. And he sits down. Everybody sits down, and he looks at Richard and I in the eye. He goes, I understand you've come a long way to see me. Well, apparently he went to Duke for undergrad and Duke for law school. He spoke perfect American English. And pretty much everything that PwC China had told us not to say or not to do was out the window. We explained that, hey, we have this client that is trying to do this internal reorganization. And we explained what the situation was, and that they were out of kind of the norms for international taxation if we look at the rest of the kind of developed countries. And what this gentleman asked was, he said, okay, well, I'm very interested in this exception. We want China to be within the norms. Why don't you go back and draft a potential exception to these particular rules? So I went back to Cincinnati, and I started drafting my first and only piece of legislation. And we met in Shanghai 2 weeks later. And this picture is from the Bund in Shanghai in China. And we presented our proposal to China. 5 years later, after working with all the other Big Four public accounting firms and other law firms, we actually got the exception. It's called Bulletin 7 to the exception of China for 698. And it is one of the things that I'm very proud of to have been a part of. And the reason I bring that up and share that story is because if there's one lesson that everybody should understand, it's be proactive, right? It was just sending out a simple email. Who would have known that sending out a simple email requesting a meeting would result in me sitting in Beijing, having the opportunity as a first-year partner to help craft international tax policy that was for the better. And whatever you do, in any aspect of your life, be proactive. Raise your hand. Develop relationships. If there's somebody you want to meet, if there's somebody you're interested in, go talk to that person. If there's something you want to do, raise your hand. If you don't understand something, ask a question. Be proactive, because it's just your life. You've got the opportunity to be able to form it and to be able to do amazing things. So as you think about your careers in accounting, and as you think about what you want to do, maybe some of you will become accountants. Maybe some of you will go on to be litigators. Maybe some of you think you'll go on to become litigators and will end up in public accounting like I did. But whatever you do, be proactive. One of the other things that I particularly pride myself in is, if you can't tell, I'm not your typical kind of Big Four public accounting partner. I tend to try to take a novel and creative approach to problems. And so one of the things that I've done so many times over the course of my career is be on panels, right? Like, hey Doug, can you do a panel? Can we do a panel on this? And there's like nothing more boring than like 6 accountants and lawyers talking about international tax. So I was asked to do a panel about 5 or 6 years ago when we were supposed to have 6 different panelists from different countries across the world talking about their respective jurisdictions. And one of the team members on my team said, hey, instead of just doing a panel, what do you think about doing a game show? What do you think about The Bachelor? And I was like, all right, well, what do you have in mind here? And they were like, well, we've got these 6 different jurisdictions that are all competing for holding company, financing company, principal company locations. Why don't we have a client on that can be the bachelor? We'll have the different countries be the bachelorette. And then each of the different countries can then kind of lobby for why they think that their country is the best. And I was like, this is an awesome idea. So we did that. I was the host of The Bachelor. We found a client to be the bachelor, and we had the 6 different bachelorettes. And not surprisingly, the audience reaction from everybody who's used to sitting up with some panels loved it. Since then, I think I've done 6 different game shows. You'll see up there I did Hollywood Squares on the right. Last year I hosted Jeopardy a number of times. We recently did, which was a ton of fun, the new Newlywed Game. And so I had partners and clients who had been working together for like 20 years talk about like how well they knew each other, like professional stuff, like how well did they know the company, and then we also asked some personal stuff. But what I want to leave you with is, you know, we're all accountants and we're auditors or advisory or tax people, but we can still have fun, right? Like, you can still have fun. It's really important to enjoy the ride. And to make sure that over the course of your career and the course of your both academic journeys and that your professional journeys, that we're having fun. And, you know, life is short, and it's really important to make sure that you enjoy every day. And, you know, we're just accountants. One of the senior partners early in my career, I remember I screwed something up, and I was just really disappointed about it. Like, I'd given the client some wrong advice, and we didn't get like sued or anything, but I was really disappointed about it. And one of the senior partners told me, he was like, it's just tax, you know, it's just tax. Nobody's gonna die. We're gonna figure out how to resolve this. We're gonna figure out how to make things right, how to fix things. But, you know, it's just tax. And so it's just accounting. It's just, you know, none of us are, well, maybe some people are aspiring to go to medical school, right? Those consequences are a little different than in our particular professions. But what I would encourage you is that don't sweat the small stuff. To the extent that anybody ends up with an F in intermediate, and I would expect nobody in this class, or nobody in this room to do that, but when those kinds of things happen, dust yourself off, move on, and learn from it, and learn from those experiences. Be patient over the course of your careers. Be attentive, be present, and be technical. Learn your particular areas. Become an expert in whatever field and whatever you're interested in, because long term, that's going to benefit you the most. And most importantly, have fun. Enjoy the ride. So with that, I would like to raise a glass to all of the accounting students and wish you luck on your endeavor as future accountants or whatever you may be. Thank you.
Can everyone please join me in thanking Mr. McConey for the